everyone, and welcome back to Maya's Reviews, a book podcast and blog where I review all types of novels. I'm Maya, and thank you for joining me for another book review. Before getting started today, I just wanted to throw a quick update on my schedule. It's just a tiny little tweak. For the past month or so, I've said I would do one episode and one review, usually corresponding, both on Friday. Recently, though, for the past few weeks, it's worked out where I have the review up on Friday and then the episode out on Saturday. And I think I'm going to just make that my official schedule. Not only so I feel like I'm fitting the schedule, but I feel like it will work better for me. So just a quick update with that. I don't think there's anything else I want to update about, except that October is over, and so now I'm sad, but besides that, the new Stranger Things little teaser, the Welcome to California thing, I'm very, very interested, and I'm excited, except we have to wait a whole few months till it comes out, and so I'm a little upset about that, but oh well. One last thing I was so very upset about. I think I've mentioned a few times how much I love ABBA. If you follow me on Twitter, you've definitely seen me tweet about them a couple of times. But I love ABBA, and I love all their albums, except for the newest one. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. But I was very disappointed, and I woke up early to listen to it, because I wasn't going to stay up till midnight to listen to it, but I wanted to listen to it as soon as possible. And so I woke up early to listen to the Voyage album, which came out November 5th, yesterday. And I started listening to the first song, and I'm like, I don't really like this, so I skipped it. And that's fine to not like one song from an album. And then I had to skip the second song, and the third, and every single one except for Just an Ocean was upsetting to me, and I was very disappointed. So I'm just pretending like the new album didn't exist at this point. But other than that, I don't think I have anything else for announcements. That's just what's going on with me. Today, I will be talking about the novel Dark Clouds Over Montana by N. Hall. And I have a lot to say about this novel. Not necessarily a lot of positive things to say about this novel, but a lot of things nevertheless. So, let's get started with our review. Thank you to Austin Macauley Publishers for providing me with a copy of this novel in exchange for an honest review. I am unable to provide a full list of content warnings since I was unable to finish reading this novel. So if you want to read Dark Clouds Over Montana by N. Hall, I would highly recommend looking for any and all content warnings that you can find beforehand, just to avoid any triggers. I can say that there was definitely death and violence in the novel, but other than that, I have no idea what comes after. So just be wary of that if you want to read this novel. Overall, I rated Dark Clouds Over Montana 2 out of 5 stars. The plot was 2 out of 5, the characters and writing 1 out of 5, and the setting and memorability 3 out of 5 stars. I started reading Dark Clouds Over Montana for its intriguing plot, but was severely disappointed. Although I tried to keep reading, I could not look past how the story was carried out and how boring the characters were to me. Unfortunately, I ended up DNFing the book, which DNF means did not finish, just book lingo, I guess, because I couldn't look past its faults. Dark Clouds Over Montana was published by Austin Macauley Publishers on June 30th, 2021. It is not a part of a series and is 266 pages. It is a fiction adult mystery thriller. The book's description from Goodreads, as always. Biotechnology and medical inventions are exciting these days. Glenda Sands has a position as a patent attorney for a biotech corporation where she is instrumental in getting these advancements produced. She is proud of her part in evaluating new treatments and potential cures to be approved and developed for the world's population. But what if some of the scientists involved with her company are creating various forms of WMD to be sold as military weapons and disaster control using both organic and chemical compounds? Does the president of the company know this? The destruction she witnesses puts her family and friends in danger. Some may die as a result. A film company travels around Montana to film scenes for a new movie, and they come upon the terrorists in wilderness areas and a small town. The scenes they shoot help the FBI and Homeland Security catch up with the criminals who unleash some painful consequences from their testing in this beautiful state. Glenda uncovers the actions people will take to use their knowledge and scientific discoveries for evil purposes and cause harm instead of good. She puts herself and those who work with her at risk to combat these forces that have infiltrated the military, the government, and her company. And there's Poppy, of course. It wouldn't be an episode without Poppy, let's be honest, right? So let's get into the characters. And I actually have my copy of the novel sitting here because I didn't put any of the names in the characters in my written review because I have no idea who is important and who is not, and which, I had no idea what was going on. One of the things that really disappointed me in this novel was the lack of depth in the characters. There was a lot of characters that were introduced within the first few pages and first few chapters, and yet none felt fleshed out or realistic. And by the way, if you hear that's paper. If you hear I have paper, guys. Physical copy of a book in front of me. Which I usually don't have the book on hand for reviews. I have read the book and I have it, but I don't sit here with it. Because this one too, I annotated. I started to annotate for the first time, highlighting stuff. And I was proud of myself. And then I was I can't continue with this. So, but I have some nice little annotations. So we're just gonna... It's nice because I can point out things. But back to the review. The first few chapters were dedicated to introducing the reader to all of the characters at once. Loads of information about every character were thrown at me within the first few chapters, which made the characters not only non-compelling, but also forgettable. I think the introduction of Glenda was pretty well done. The thing I had an issue with, I think, is because it's a third-person narrator, which those can be excellent, but I feel like in this story, because there were so many different viewpoints, so many different characters, and there wasn't a clear switch between them, it really felt like the narrator was just... It felt like I was reading a SparkNotes dissection of this novel rather than reading the novel. There was no emotion with it, if that makes sense. But looking at this book, I think it was the first chapter, first chapters are always boring for me, because there's usually not a lot of action. But then once I got to chapter 2, I was like, yeah, one of my notes on here for the first chapter, I said, I feel like the author is trying to accomplish too many character relationships and personalities at once. And so far it is dry, flimsy, and none of the characters are compelling. Which, fine, it was the first chapter. But once I got to the second chapter, there's this wedding between, I don't even know who was getting married, to be honest. Wanda, maybe? Question mark? I don't know. That's the thing, is it wasn't very clear to me. Like, I can't remember any of it because it was so overbearing with the details about each character. Like, personally, I prefer discovering more about the characters throughout the story rather than learning all their information and just everything at once at the beginning of the novel. Because the complete reveal of the characters ruin the mystery and the fun in discovering attributes throughout the story. For example, here's a quote from the second chapter of Dark Clouds of Montana by Anne Hall, because I forgot to say, like, at the beginning that all the quotes, if I mention any, are from this book. Lucy and Gramercy Stockton were the older friends of the wedding couple. Lucy's family had been neighbors of the bride's parents for many years before Wanda's folks moved back to Montana to retire. They had promised to participate in the wedding and had traveled down from Sacramento to be here. Wanda Steinem had spent the last 2 years in LA working as a CGI artist in a studio for animated kids films, where she had met Glenn Addison, a new film director with some promise. He had already made 2 successful films, winning Oscars for his landmark techniques. Wanda had a lot of talent on her own and hoped to work on some other films, particularly sci-fi, which she loved. She found it much more creative than fairy tales. And then it goes on to talk about how Wanda needed more family at the wedding on her side. Interested in starting a podcast? I bet you haven't heard of Anchor, an app and site that makes it super easy to create your own. Not only is it free, but Anchor also allows you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor distributes your podcast for you to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more platforms. Anchor has creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and computer. It's everything you need all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started today. Here's a better example. It goes from Wanda, so she is the bride, getting married to the dude, and it goes, Lucy helped Wanda get ready along with Wanda's mother, Nancy, who had flown down from Billings, Montana, by herself. She was determined to be at her daughter's wedding. Her husband, Art, was ill and hospitalized with a sore on his leg that wouldn't heal. He had purchased a beautiful locket engraved with his love for her to wear on her wedding day, and her mother had brought a pair of matching earrings for her as well. And then it goes on to describe Wanda, but then it just goes randomly into Glenn's parents lived in Palisades Park, a ritzy suburb of Los Angeles. They've been in the publishing business for a long time, bunch of stuff. And I just felt like there was so many details for people that weren't seemingly important. And it made them all seem important, but only a few of them show up after these chapters. And this continues on with a bunch of characters for chapters, and I was so uninterested in it for the longest time. I think the only thing that kept me reading was because I wanted to get to the plot. I wanted to get to Glenda uncovering evil and, stuff like that. I wanted to get to it. But I feel like the disconnection between the narrator and the characters is really what didn't help either. that's the thing with the writing too, is I was not a fan of the writing style because it disconnected the characters from the narrator and the story. It felt very bland and it lacked life, if that makes sense. I felt like I was reading a nonfiction novel about actual events rather than a thriller. Or like I said earlier, like I was reading a summary of the novel rather than reading the actual novel. So it just wasn't appealing to me, and I feel like the writing and the characters is what really, really messed this up for me. Because characters are so important, and the way they just didn't have emotion, and they didn't feel like, it didn't feel like I could have a connection with them, which is really important to me, really threw me off of this novel. The atmosphere of this novel with the setting, besides the plot, is what kept me reading for so long. It's mysterious, risky, and full of shady events. And the mysteriousness of it all is what I was really looking forward to, since this is a mystery thriller. But I feel like part of your mystery is discovering stuff about the characters, so that part was already taken away. And then it took so long to get into the plot, which I'll talk about later. But in terms of the actual setting, the novel is mainly set in a small town in Montana where moving in warrants a full police investigation, which, I mean, were they right in the end? As far as I read, yeah, okay, they were. But still, these people moved in, and the sheriff, who really annoyed me, was like, I don't know, they're a little fishy over there. And was like, I'm gonna need every single thing you can find about these people. I'm launching a full investigation because I do not trust them. They moved in. Who would want to move here? Probably because people probably don't want to move there because you're so overbearing. But, you know, anyways, small town. And then the plot, like I said, the premise of this novel is what intrigued me in the first place and really drew me in. However, I was very, very confused. Even when I got a good portion through the novel, I was very confused. The characters and the writing style did not help with my confusion either, but it really seemed like the different chapters and point of views, I say with air quotes because it's a third-person narrator, were pointing in completely opposite directions. And maybe I didn't read far enough into the story to see the clash of these directions, but it really just added to the disappointment that I had, because I was so looking forward to it. I was excited. Man, it's been a horrible week. Ava and Dark Clouds over Montana. Both made me sad, you know? But I really felt like this novel had so much potential, and I really think the characters' writing and lack of a clear plot really made this novel not as good and not as appealing to me. Like, I really wanted to keep, because like I said, I was also annotating this too. It was my first time annotating, so I was having so much fun, like, writing about the book and, like, writing my thoughts. I was having so much fun with that, and then I got to the point where I'm like, this isn't fun anymore. Like, there's nothing, this novel, I was like, it's not giving me anything. It's not appealing anymore. It's not mysterious. A lot of my notes at the end of each chapter were like, I have no idea what's going on. Who is this person? Very business heavy, because there's a lot of business in here, and I was like, I am not that smart. Let's not go there. And I also had notes like, there were very overly long, boring, and not useful descriptions of characters, because you can have long descriptions of characters. I've read books before where that's been done, except the characters being described are not important to the plot. They're not very, like, I don't need to know what Wanda's or Glenn's or whoever's parents were doing. Like, I don't need to know that. I don't need to know that they live in a small town and have this business. Or maybe I did and I just didn't read far enough, but it really felt unnecessary and not useful. And I think that's what really made me stop reading, because I was so frustrated, because I so wanted to understand, but I was getting no answers and I was very confused. And it was really upsetting, because I was so looking forward to this novel. And I think that's why, because usually when I DNF books, it's a 1-star. That's typically what I do. But with this, I gave it a 2-star because I felt like it had so much potential. It was just lacking too many things. Whereas, like, there were aspects that I liked about this novel, like the premise of it. Because also I'm giving it a little saving grace because I didn't read that far into the novel. But I did read enough to know, like, this was not appealing to me anymore. But usually I will give books I do not finish 1 stars because they weren't as good as I wanted them to be, and they were, I don't want to say so bad, but they were not as good as I wanted them to be, so I didn't end up reading them all the way through. And I didn't like the novel, that's usually why I DNF. But this, I wanted so bad to enjoy it, and the premise and the plot seemed like it was going to be so good, and then other stuff just came in the way of that, I feel. So that's why I gave it 2 stars instead of 1. It was just very disappointing to me because I was so excited. But, yeah, I think that is my review of Dark Clouds Over Montana by N. Hall. I'm so sorry to everyone who's listening to this, who's like, gee, she's like completely just tearing this novel apart. That is not what I'm meaning to do. I'm just trying to share my thoughts on it because like I said, I wanted so bad to enjoy it, but I just couldn't because there were so many aspects that just got in the way of that. And now I'm sad because I was annotating it too, and I didn't get to finish annotating. So, that is the end of my review. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please check out my blog, Maya's Reviews, at mayagreviews.wordpress.com. You can also find me at Maya the Bookworm on Twitter, Goodreads, BookBub, and Book Sirens. I'm also on Tumblr at Maya Reviews. If you want me to review your book or want to come on the podcast to discuss a novel, maybe even just reach out to me, you can email me at mayagbookraviews@gmail.com. I do ask that if you are reaching out in regards to a review request, interview, collab, blog tour, or anything publicity related, that you check out my publicity request page on my blog first and then email me. Thank you so much for listening and happy reading, and I hope October was a good month for you. I really hope so.